All right, y'all. So, Diddy trial, first week. I watched hours of coverage, and I'm going to give y'all an overview of what went down. Let me just tell you, it's very disturbing stuff. I don't know how else to describe it. And a lot of people think I shouldn't even be talking about this in the first place because as Christians, how does it benefit us to engage in these conversations whatsoever? And I get it. I understand. But the way that I view the world, and I could imagine that there's a lot of people who probably view the world in very similar ways that I view the world. I see the Bible in everything. I see scriptures in everything. And as I'm watching this case, as I'm hearing the media who were inside of the courtroom talk about how Cassie was on the stand and talk about the 10-year relationship that she had with Diddy and the disturbing encounters that she had with Diddy and with other male, you know what, workers who she would engage with. I can't even repeat some of the things that she said. That's how dark they are. I'm sitting here watching an interview from Big Homie. That's his name, Big Homie CC. He used to be one of Diddy's bodyguards. And he says something very interesting. He says something very interesting on Piers Morgan. He says something along the lines of, God placed him on this earth to stop and expose Diddy and people like him. He also said that he submitted a toxicology report, and within his system, they found a substance that ultimately led to him getting pneumonia. I was also watching an interview with Gene Deal, another one of Diddy's bodyguards, right? And he just flat out said Diddy's a demon. And I'm listening to all this stuff. I'm watching all this content, all this coverage. And I can't help but think about what Jesus said during the Sermon on the Mount. And I could imagine when he said it, the people who were listening were deeply confused. And there's probably some people who were deeply disturbed at what Jesus said. And I want to have a conversation and I want to talk about it. But first, I want to give you guys some additional context as it relates to what exactly went down during week 1 of this trial. And then I promise if you stick around, we're going to get into what Jesus said and why I believe it relates so much to this case and how we can actually learn from the words of Jesus. All right. First things first. This is a story or a video from the Daily Mail. Let me play it and then you'll get a better idea of what actually went down during week 1 of the trial. All right, let's go.
Throughout her testimony, Cassie referred to Diddy as Sean. She and Diddy didn't look at each other at all during her testimony, and instead he passed notes to his attorneys and whispered to them as she spoke.
She said she was 21 when she and Diddy, who is 17 years older than her, got together. She said they first kissed during her 21st birthday party trip to Las Vegas, and they later had sex during a trip to Miami. She said it was her first adult relationship, and she was impressed how he commanded respect and had assistance at his beck and call.
But she told the jury that soon the relationship turned abusive and very controlling.
She said she only had to look at him with the, quote, wrong face, and she would get hit.
She said the freakoffs took up to 72 hours of her week, with the longest one ever lasting for 4 days. But Cassie says she agreed because she loved him very much and couldn't feel like she could say no. And at this point, she got quite emotional, pausing to wipe her eyes and place her hands on her belly. It's also worth noting that Diddy's 18-year-old twin daughters were seen walking into court and were likely there during this disturbing testimony.
Now, here's some of the very disturbing part. So Cassie was, and this is allegedly, but This is according to her, right? On the stand during the trial. She was high off something. I think it was ecstasy or something like that. During one of these freak offs, right? And she's lying on the floor, I believe, in the bathroom, and she is getting the R. Kelly treatment, just to keep it PG, from Diddy and from a male escort. So much so that she said she was having trouble breathing because it was so much fluid. Being distributed on her face. Now, I'm going to play this video and I'm going to turn it down during some parts just to keep it PG. But yeah, this is some stuff that I can't even really, and you know what? It makes you think. How does somebody even get in a position where they are turned on by this? From Diddy's standpoint, right? How does somebody even get into a position where this is what they want to see happen to the woman that they claim to be in love with? How does that even create any sense of happiness or satisfaction in your being whatsoever? It's very, very interesting. And it speaks to a greater lesson, as I said, that we're going to get to in a second. But anyway, let me press play.
I was in the courtroom as Cassie was testifying, so let me tell you guys everything that you didn't see or may have not heard, because it's a lot. I will say the most damning part of her testimony for me is when she describes a freak off where Diddy and another man, an escort, are standing on top of her while she is laying on the floor high off of ecstasy, the point where she is choking on their pee. And to further give context, on the right hand side of the court seated is her husband Alex Fine. On the left hand side, Diddy's 6 out of 7 kids are sitting in the courtroom as Cassie is describing having weekly freak offs for years that would last 2, 3, one lasted up to 4 days. She talked about damaging hotel rooms so bad in one instance that they had to pay such a hefty fee because the hotel told them that they needed to completely redecorate the room after a freak off. After a freak off, there would be blood, urine, and lots of baby oil. There was so much baby oil. There was also so much baby oil talk to the point where the judge at one point told prosecutors, wrap it up. But before we even got there, a very, very pregnant Cassie was called to the stand. She was wearing a tight brown turtleneck dress that was hugging her baby bump. When she sat down, you could tell she was nervous. And if you couldn't, you quickly picked up on it because once she started talking, you noticed that she paused a lot. She would sigh heavily before she answered a question. One of those moments was when she explained to the court that a year into their relationship, that Diddy had approached her with this fantasy that he had. He called it voyeurism, where he wanted to see her have sex with another man, later referred to as freak-offs. She said her stomach dropped. She was 22 years old. She described herself as very naive and a people pleaser. She said the only reason that she agreed to it is because she knew it would make him happy and she was afraid what would happen if she said no. That's also around the time, she says, that he started to get abusive. Most of her testimony today was spent on talking about these freak-offs, the different escorts that they would use, the different hotels that they would use. She said that she would find escorts off of Craigslist and this escort service called Cowboys for Angels. And to describe them, they weren't the most attractive men, right? They were very average looking. Some of them weren't even conventionally attractive. One thing they had in common is most of them were black because Diddy preferred for her black men with a big D, she said. At one point, Cassie broke down in tears when the prosecutor asked her, why didn't you leave? If the freak-offs, as you explained, were so disgusting and humiliating, why not leave? And she started crying and said that she was very deeply in love and this was the only alone time that she could get with Diddy. And it got to a point where this was kind of the only emotional connection that she was getting from this man that she was dating. So much more that I'll cover in another video, including...
I saw another video where Cassie stated that Diddy was asking, for Cassie to come up with a nickname for him. And Cassie was like, I don't want to call you anything that another woman has called you in the past. And Diddy said, well, what did you used to call your grandpa? And Cassie says, Pop Pop. And Diddy says, I want you to call me Pop Pop. I think it just kind of displays the manipulation involved from an emotional standpoint and also from a spiritual standpoint as well that was involved in this relationship. Assuming that everything that she's saying is true, right? It just points to the manipulation that was involved because, yeah, of course, one can ask themselves, and I asked myself this very question, why did she stay in that situation for so long? But as you hear what she said, this is the only alone time that she had with him. So this was essentially a massive part of their relationship. And this is somebody who she was deeply in love with. And, unfortunately, when you're young, when you're in the industry, when you're in love, you do some crazy stuff that you look back on and you ask yourself, why the heck did I do that? Even if you're not in the industry, when you're young and when, you're in a relationship, you do some crazy, wild stuff and you ask yourself, why the heck did I do that? When you look back on it in retrospect. Big homie CC was on Piers Morgan. He said prior to coming on this interview, there was a black SUV that rammed into his car, seemingly trying to take him out so that he could not do this interview on Piers Morgan. I want you to listen to a little bit of what he said, all right?
From what you know about him, Sean Combs, obviously the perception of it has changed dramatically since these allegations were made and since he got charged. I mean, from everything we're seeing now, he seems a very unpleasant, nasty, violent piece of work. Is that a correct assessment?
The assessment is going to be correct. So what I've learned is whenever you see a gentleman like this from affluence and power, whenever they have an addiction to MDMA or the drug ecstasy, they call it the love drug. So he's been doing this drug for over 20 years. So that's going to lead his view skewed when it comes to sexual activity. I believe it's helped turn him into a sexual deviant. And, what type of man wants to see another man urinate in his wife's mouth? I feel like it's evil. I think his behavior is egregious. And, I have a history of using very heinous acts on people like this who participate in this type of lascivious acts.
So I thought that was interesting what he said in terms of when you have that level of influence, that type of money, that type of access, that type of power, and when you're addicted to drugs, that can warp your entire behavior and it can warp your entire being, honestly. And it can turn you into a completely unrecognizable person. And it can create appetites within your flesh that become so deep that you can't help but satisfy them, or so you think you can't help but satisfy them. There's always a way out. Jesus always offers a way out. In the midst of temptation, Jesus always offers a way out. But I think oftentimes we pander to our flesh. We make excuses for our sin. And we prioritize that above what we know is right because it feels good. And when you're around a whole bunch of people that idolize you and that look up to you, that are looking to you for guidance and are looking to you to make the command, I think it becomes very easy to fall into a position to where you just turn into somebody who's willing to do any and everything to satisfy themselves. And that's kind of what I hear is being described in this situation. Now, I want you to listen to what he said in relation to the freakoffs specifically, because I thought it was very interesting.
Most people I've talked to say, well, there were layers of parties that Diddy would throw. There was the public one with all the glamour and all the celebrities and stuff, and then there'd be various layers ending up in the freakoff area, and that would go on sometimes for days and was extremely depraved, involved a lot of drugs, a lot of very kinky, depraved sex and so on. What can you tell me about the freakoffs? For those who don't know anything about this world, what was it about the freakoffs that is so fascinating to people, do you think?
What people have to understand is swinger parties exist. And that's exactly the lifestyle that this gentleman lives. He's a swinger. And swingers hang with other swingers. That's what it is. Like, the term freak off has become sensationalized by media, but what the true nature and name for this event is going to be called a swinger party, Pierce. And that's what takes place. You people, partners sharing their partner, indulging in sexual acts. You know, as long as things are consensual, you know, what people do is their business. But if I'm getting a call because somebody's applying oppression to other people, that's when things become a problem. And, you know, I had sent in a video of the guy, Combs, walking around collecting everyone's cell phone before they get onto a yacht to go party. Why do you have to collect everyone's cell phone before you go into a party? He's collecting the phones himself. That's what I meant by there's layers to the party. You know, the first part of the event is going to be a normal socializing mixer. But, you know, when the guy comes out collecting phones, that's when things are about to get, that's when somebody's cake's getting touched. This is how it goes. It's a zest apocalypse right now, man. We got to do something about this.
Is there any doubt that he was bisexual? Diddy, that seems to be clear from a lot of the evidence that's come out.
Yeah. All of these guys are when it comes to that. Like, I've very rarely seen any straight dudes in this industry, man. That's why I pivoted my business. Like, it's like, you know, I don't want to be the only straight man at the party. So, you know, I got to change it up. All of these dudes are, man. But all of them are.
And the freak-offs,
all bisexual weirdos.
Right, you're painting a picture of these freak-offs as being consensual largely, although the issue of the phones is obviously significant and will be tested, I'm sure, in court. But you're also suggesting that it was everyone sort of sharing partners. But isn't the key part of the Diddy case predicated on the fact that he may have been trafficking, in other words, bringing in a lot of sex workers to take part in these as well? And that he, for example, with Cassie Ventura, was, you know, they were having, you know, male sex workers, female sex workers, and so on. In other words, it may have been consensual, but it also involved people who were not, you know, with each other, but actual sex workers joining in.
Yeah. So, you know, whenever you see the little guys, the white dudes come in with the spiky hair, looking like vampires, yeah, you know, the sex workers is arriving. And at the end of the day, is it consensual if you're promising people a career path and a lifestyle and glitz and glamour, and you're saying, look, we're all doing it. Come join us. You party with us, then I can get you a record deal. I can get you this. That's what's going on to certain people. You know, everybody isn't being financially compensated, and that's where lies the problem.
Big Homie, you've referenced the fact that several times we tried to...
So, he said something that was interesting as well. I'm not going to play it, but he said essentially like, yo, this was a valuable tool in Diddy's business arsenal. From the standpoint of, if you're trying to make a deal happen, if you're in a negotiation with somebody in the industry, or just, you know, with somebody in general that you're trying to, you know, cut a deal with, if you find out that, you know, they like to party, they like to hang out, they like to enjoy men or women, it could be very advantageous to, you know, invite them to a party and put them in a situation to where you have information that could be used against them that they would not want to be released in exchange for a business deal. And I thought that was very interesting. And I'm sure that happens. I'm sure because it's always happened. There's countless stories of people using extortion and, you know, manipulative tactics in order to force their way into certain business engagements. That's always happened. But then you add on the fact of like, yo, this is a dude who allegedly also really enjoyed the sexual side of things as well. It kind of turns into this full circle addiction that ultimately takes your entire identity a hold and keeps you in bondage. I'm thinking about Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount. Remember I said Jesus said something that I think had a lot of people disturbed during that time? Matthew 5:27. Specifically talking about lust, right? He said, "You have heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart." And then Jesus says this, verse 29, "If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it is better for you to lose one of your members than your whole body be thrown into hell." Jesus said, if your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. It's better for you to lose one of your body parts than to have your whole body thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, then cut off your hand and throw it away. It's better for you to lose one of your body parts than for your whole body to go into hell. Could you imagine what the people were thinking when Jesus was telling them to mutilate themselves in order to make it to heaven? Now, obviously, this is hyperbole. Jesus is exaggerating to make a point, right? He's exaggerating to make a point. Point being, nothing on this earth is worth missing out on heaven for. Nothing on this earth is worth missing out on heaven for. That means in order to follow Jesus, we are going to have to make some extreme sacrifices in our life. And oftentimes that can involve foregoing worldly success in order to have eternal success. That is, relationship for all of eternity with God in heaven. Because if that worldly success that you are experiencing is causing you to sin, if it's causing you to put God second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh place in your life, then you need to get rid of that lifestyle. You need to get rid of that success. You need to get rid of whatever is in your life that is causing you to place God second. Because ultimately, if you allow yourself to remain in that space, in that heart posture, you will inevitably fall away and your heart will become so hardened that you will not receive the free gift of salvation that God is offering to you. And you will disregard it as insignificant, assuming that you have everything that you need in your own power because you have been so advanced at satisfying your flesh to the point that you believe that you have everything that you need and then some. I want to watch this by Gene Deal. I missed it. I forgot about it. I naturally went into the scripture because I wanted to talk about it. But let's listen to this by Gene Deal real quick. So Gene Deal said that Diddy is a demon.
Dude is a demon, bro. Dude is a demon. That dude was possessed with some kind of demon, man. He was possessed with some kind of demon. want to be in this all this red, this dark rooms with the music blasting. It had to be a certain temperature, a certain type of music for the vibration they were saying. Come on, bro. And I don't care what nobody say, man. And like when people still talk and keep on talking, if that priest ever come out and he talking, if people keep talking, you'll find out that a lot of shit that Gene Deal has said has been the truth and nothing but the truth. I was there. I was there when that priest or whoever he was rubbed that stuff on his head, put his hand on top of him, told him to grab the bird out the cage, the white dove, and he threw the dove in the air, and the dove acted like he ain't have no wings and hit the fucking ground. Boom! That motherfucker start walking my way. I'm looking like this, bro. I'm like,
Gene Deal's interesting because clearly he was there early. Obviously, he saw some stuff because he's talking about what he saw. And in a roundabout way, he kind of benefited from it because, like, you didn't say nothing during the time where things were happening, right? But you seen that stuff was going down, and you seen that there was some weird, wicked, demonic stuff going down. But you didn't say stuff was going down when it was happening. But you were still on payroll and you were still getting a check, right? So, and listen, at least he's saying something now, at least, I guess. But long story short, it doesn't matter what you have in this life here on earth. It does not matter what you have. If it is causing you to stumble, if it is causing you to sin, cut it off. Cut it off and do not look back. Do not look back. Because from the sound of it, it seems like Diddy was involved in this type of stuff from very early on in his career. And it seems like his career only amplified his appetite for sin. So if that's the case, you need to choose a new career path. And that's extreme, right? We're talking about potentially walking away from billions of dollars. But does it really matter if you have billions of dollars and you sizzling in hell? Does it really matter if you have billions of dollars and you're apart from God for all of eternity? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that's the point that I think Jesus was trying to make in Matthew, is that if your right hand is causing you to sin, get rid of it. If your right eye is causing you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away and keep it pushing. Because it's better to limp with one eye and one leg and half an arm into heaven than to have a full body and be burning in hell for all of eternity. And this is only week 1. I could only imagine what's going to be coming out as this trial continues. But let me know what you think. Get in my comments, like this video. Subscribe. I'm out, y'all.